For the last couple of years, I'm in the constant quest for best method to acquire foreign languages. My method for learning foreign languages in essence goes around having great time and using comprehensible input or the content such as books, movies, YouTube videos in the setting in which I can understand at least 75% of the whole amount of input in the foreign language. But to prove that my method really works, in November last year I decided to take French official exam, and you will be amazed by results. A lot of people doubt in the efficiency and effectiveness of the language acquisition approach that I use, and I get it. Almost whole language learning industry is based on the opposite skill building approach. Skill building is nowadays an axiom, no matter what contemporary research and studies show. By the way, I explained the differences between these two in this video above. But can we really acquire grammar, vocabulary, pronunciation, and all those rules that exist in a language if we only use comprehensible input such as books or YouTube videos? Thus, putting aside all the case studies that I read about language acquisition, I decided to be hamster myself and try to measure the progress that I made in last year with French using only language acquisition approach. Hence, I opted for the French exam called DELF B2 in order to measure the efficiency of my method that I use for learning this language. For those who haven't heard, DELF is an exam of the Ministry for National Education and Youth of the French Republic, which allows an official assessment of the level of knowledge of the French language and is of unlimited duration. It is intended for people for whom French is not their native language. I decided to take B2 level, which is often referred as upper intermediate level. In everyday speech, this level might be called as confident. At this level, learners can function independently in a variety of academic or professional environments. Besides, the DELF B2 exam is made so that it measures your proficiency in all 4 skills, and it lasts around 3.5 hours. Each part of the test has possible 25 points, and you have to score at least 5 points in each part in order to pass. Furthermore, in order to pass the entire DELF B2 exam, you have to score a minimum of 50 points. I would not go into more detail how DELF exam actually works, but I can assure you that this is the most comprehensive method for measuring your proficiency in the language. Because through 4 parts of the exam, the Special Commission would thoroughly evaluate your understanding of oral and written language as well as the skills developed in the language such as pronunciation, vocabulary, grammar, intonation. And on top of that, they will closely evaluate your capability to produce both spoken and written language. While the most language learners book classes, study grammar for months, or enroll specially designed courses in order to pass DELF exam, in the past year I relied only on the comprehensible input. Meaning that I did not review grammar, I did not do vocabulary lists, I did not practice pronunciation, I did not practice speaking in French with natives or foreigners, nor I did practice writing in French. I have to say that my last contact with French grammar and rules in the language was in my secondary school 15 years ago, and even then the level of my French was barely beginner. On the other hand, I did inform myself about how DELF exam practically functions by watching the series of videos that you might find in the description below. So if you ask me what I actually did in last year in order to acquire French, this is basically only 3 things. first I did a bunch of easy reading, so to say en français facile, usually literature that is devoted for those who are at B1 and B2 level. Second, I watched a lot of YouTube videos in French on vast variety of topics, and these videos were highly compelling and comprehensible for me. And of course, on the other hand, I use subtitles. These subtitles were all in French so that I can acquire more French and get used to the language. And third, I listen a lot to the French radio station, and that was usually while I was ironing my clothes during weekdays. Generally speaking, my rough assessment is that I spent at least 10 to 15 hours per week with comprehensible input in French during last year. Also, I have to underline that in the last 2 months before DELF exam, I intensified the time spent with French language, so probably in these last 2 months I spent at least 3 or 4 hours per day with comprehensible input in French. And the last thing that I have to say is that I practically spent only 1 weekend preparing for DELF exam concretely in terms of its structure and getting to know the whole process in advance. And now the results of the exam. I passed, like you can see. I literally waited for my diploma for more than 4 months in order to arrive from France, but now when it is here, let's go through the results and the explanations why the results are such as they are. Okay, so let's go from the oral comprehension, and this is the mark that was the worst on my exam, and the reason is simple. I would say when I started preparing for this exam, I found the information on the internet that since 2023 the new structure of exam will be taken, in which on this part of oral comprehension you would only have multiple choice questions, so you only encircle the correct answer or the answer that you think is correct. This part is around half an hour long, and it has 2 parts. One part in which you only listen 1 time the audio, and the second part in which you listen the audio 2 times. So it was not only the exam in which you just encircle the answer, but as well you had to fill in the answers, and I was literally surprised, and I have to say that I didn't manage to do it correctly because I wasn't expecting this structure of oral comprehension part of the exam. I have to say that my personal feeling is that my oral comprehension is the best part of my language skills in French, and I'm pretty sure that this score would be much better if the structure was different, or if I were prepared for this structure of this part of the exam. So very bad score, and I would say this part of the exam is very difficult because these audios are very fast, and sometimes it's very difficult to discern the sound because you have only speakers. When it comes to the comprehension of written French, my score was 16 points out of 25, so I consider this as good, but still I think that I might be even better. And like I said, my comprehension in French, whether this is oral or written, is pretty high, and to be honest, I don't know why this score is lower than I expected to be. Probably because there are some catchy questions throughout the text. So during this part of the exam you have a text that is written in French, and afterwards you have questions that you have to answer, and this part of the exam lasts for an hour. And to be honest, for me this is the easiest part of the exam, and like I said, I'm not sure why my score is not better, because my personal opinion is that this part of the exam is the easiest. Okay, so things are getting better now, and you will figure out why. The next part of the exam that I want to review is the the written production, and in written production I scored 13 points out of 25, which for me is actually an incredible result because I have never written anything in French for the last 15 years literally. So I never write in French, I never have a correspondence with a French person in this language. So this is really amazing result, and this is something that I often mention. So our written production is actually the output and the input is reading. So we develop our writing through reading comprehensible input. I have to say that the only thing that I was practicing when it comes to this part of the exam, and this is a written production, is the structure. So on this DELF B2 exam they pay a lot of attention to the structure of your letter. In my case it was letter to mayor of the municipality, so you have a task to write something in French, whether this is a letter, demand or plea or something. So the structure is very important. How the French people say, la structure est la plus importante que le contenu, and this is something that I practice. So to have introduction, to have resume, to have a question that you're writing about, and to have final part of the letter. And of course the best thing for the end, and this is oral production, and I had the best mark on this part, and this is 17 points out of 25, which I really consider as amazing because during this part you have a discourse with two members of the commission, and you speak about the topic that you choose from the papers, and then afterwards they would ask you questions about the concrete topic. You have to have the arguments, of course, for every of your answers. So I think this is a result is amazing because I never speak in French, so I have never practiced French before this exam, and like I said, I only surround myself with comprehensible input, whether these are YouTube videos, free voluntary reading, French radio stations, and I don't simply practice speaking. And this is one more point that I cannot stress enough on this YouTube channel, and that is that speaking is the result of our proficiency in the language, not the cause. So speaking itself won't make you better in French or any other language. It is reading and listening to the language that will affect your speaking and writing. Thus, the final note is 55.5 points out of 100, and I think when you look at the whole exam it's not too much, but as I said, this is with only 1 year, only reading and watching fun and interesting content for 1 year, without any grammar learning, without speaking to someone, without practicing pronunciation, without practicing writing, without learning vocabulary, etc., etc. Only comprehensible input, and this is the result that is a sort of proof that comprehensible input really works, and I'm really glad to share it with you. Thanks for watching. I hope that I encourage you to use language acquisition, and let me know what you think about the case study I did, and should I do the same for another language. See you in some of the next videos. Bye!